Welcome back, dear students. After completing our detailed study of the rape of the lock, today we shift our focus towards something equally important, the previous year questions and how to answer them effectively. So, in this session, we will not only look at common questions from the past exam but also learn the best strategies to frame clear, analytical, and scoring answers. Whether it's a short note or a 10 marker or maybe 20 marker, by the end of this class, you will know exactly how to tackle them. So keep your notes ready and let's begin this smart and strategic revision session. So the first question for this session is Pope's use of supernatural machinery in The Rape of the Lock as a quality enhancing device. ये 2009 का क्वेश्चन है 20 मार्क्स का. So in this answer you need to give a definition and classical origin of machinery. This is actually originated from Homer's epics and Dryden's interpretation. So you need to write about the role of sylphs, genomes, and aerials and salamanders and nymphs. So, and you also need to mention the machinery inspired by epic conventions like Homer and Virgil. You need to write that it enhances mock epic tone and adds fantastical charm, which adds to satirical elegance and poetic richness. So basically, you need to write about Pope mock epic intent, mock heroic intent, which is elevating trivial events like cutting a lock via grand mythological forces. You can write about Ariel as the chief sylph here, his speeches, his surveillance, and the betrayal. There's an enhancement of narrative style, comic tone, and poetic grandeur. आप इसमें symbolism पर भी काम कर सकते हो. Like sylphs are equal to coquettes machinery as a parody of epic seriousness. So quality enhancement की बात कर सकते हैं यहाँ पर हम. That is fantastical overlay on realism adds wit and satire. To answer this question effectively, you can begin by explaining the term supernatural machinery. This is a classical epic convention that Pope adopts from Homer and Virgil. You can emphasize that Pope transformed this epic tool into a playful and ironic device in the Rape of the Lock through the uses of sylphs, genomes, salamanders, Ariel, and other spirits. So you can introduce Ariel as the chief sylph who guides and guards Belinda, and explain how these spirits replace the god and goddesses of the traditional epics. Then you can elaborate on how this machinery contributes to the mock epic tone, elevating a trivial event like a lock of hair being cut to the level of grand epic conflict. So you may point out that this imaginative inclusion of supernatural beings adds a fantastical charm and helps Pope gently mock the superficiality and vanity of aristocratic society. Finally, you can highlight how this machinery enriches the satirical elegance and poetic beauty of the poem, making it both humorous and artistically sophisticated. So, you can conclude your answer by asserting that Pope's supernatural machinery is not just decorative but essentially to the poem's style, tone, and satirical purpose. I think this is sufficient for this answer. Now let's go to the next question. The Rape of the Lock as a satire on 18th century polite society. So you can start the answer by defining satire and outline the features of 18th century polite society, such as obsession with appearance, leisure, and decorum. You can discuss how Pope satirizes these traits through his portrayal of Belinda and frivolous upper class. You can examine scenes like the card game of Ombre as a mock battle and the exaggerated reactions to the cutting of a lock to highlight the superficial values of the society. And you can conclude the answer by stating how Alexander Pope cleverly exposes the vanity and moral emptiness of aristocratic life under the veil of humor. So यहाँ पर आपको vanity, pride, materialism of the aristocracy को satirize करना है. पोइट्री में बहुत 5 कैंटोस में ऐसे बहुत सारे एग्जाम्पल्स हैं. जब आप उन्हें दोबारा पढ़ेंगे तो आप इस आंसर को अच्छे से लिख पाएंगे अगर आप उन लाइंस का रेफरेंस देते हैं इसमें, क्योंकि 20 नंबर का क्वेश्चन है तो वो ज़्यादा अच्छा इफ़ेक्टिव रहेगा. एंड यू नीड टू शो हाउ ट्रिवियल मैटर्स लाइक स्टोलन lock affair are treated with exaggerated importance, as well as you can add the game of Ombre, where the where it seems to be, it seems like the it represented it as a mock battle and exaggerated reactions to be cutting off the lock to highlight the superficial values of this society. राइट आप इसमें क्रिटिक लिख सकते हो सोशल कंडक्ट का, फैशन का, फ्लर्टेशन का, कोर्टशिप का. सो देयर इज़ आयरनी बिहाइंड द टर्म पोलाइट, तो आप इसको यहाँ पर डिस्कस कर सकते हो. ठीक है. नाउ द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, एग्जामिन द फैक्टर्स बिहाइंड द ग्रोथ ऑफ पॉलिटिकल सटायर in the age of Dryden and Pope. So you can begin your answer with this term political instability. You can write about Whigs versus Tories. There is a rise of party politics, public corruption, patronage system, and writer's role as a moral critique. You can also explain satire as a tool of commenting on national decline, right? So you can begin your answer with a brief historical context of late 17th and early 18th century England, noting the political stability, rise of party politics, and literary patronage. You can discuss here how poets like Dryden and Pope use satire to critique not only personal enemies but also broader social and political corruption there. In Pope's case, you can discuss how the Rape of the Lock and other works like Dunciad reflect his response to cultural and political degeneration. You can also mention Pope's mastery of heroic couplets as a tool of precise, witty criticism. Now the next question is, comment on Pope's treatment of the rape of the lock. ये 2011 का क्वेश्चन है, 20 मार्क्स का. So this is a broad question. Focus on Pope's intention, which were reconcile two families by turning a real life conflict into a humorous verse. तो ये पोप का ट्रीटमेंट है. इसमें 2 कैरेक्टर है, बेलिंडा और बैरन, जो कि रियल लाइफ कैरेक्टर्स पर बेस्ड है. मिसेस एरेबल फर्मर और जॉन पीटर. तो उनका ये रियल लाइफ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है जिसका रिकंसाइल करने के लिए ये जो टेक्स्ट जो कि अलेक्जेंडर पोप ने लिखा, ये एक तरह का ट्रीटमेंट था ताकि दोनों फैमिलीज़ का रीयूनियन हो जाए. सो दिस इज़ अबाउट पोप्स इंटेंशंस, और वी कैन से पोप्स ट्रीटमेंट which were to reconcile two families by turning a real life conflict into a humorous verse. You should discuss how Alexander Pope blends classical epic style with a modern trivial incident. he is maintaining a delicate balance between the mockery and elegance. uh, in your answer you can highlight his Alexander Pope's craftsmanship in language and use of supernatural elements like genomes, airy spirits, umbriel, और भी बहुत सारे थे. तो you can discuss how he blends classical epic style with a modern trivial incident, maintaining a delicate balance between mockery and elegance. You can highlight his craftsmanship in language, use of supernatural elements, and overall the structure to create a refined poetic narrative. And you can also conclude your answer by recognizing Pope's dual objective. The first objective is entertain, and the second is subtle social critique. So this is the answer would be in a light hearted tone with serious undertones. Artistic handling of trivial subjects with grand style is representing here. There's a balance between humor and moral judgment, and this is a perfect example. The text Rape of the Lock, this is the perfect example of neoclassical harmony and wit. So you can add these lines to your answer, or these points to your answer, so it may be it can be a good answer. Now the next question is, how do the sylphs, the airy spirits, help in development of the mock epic element in the Rape of the Lock? So basically, you can begin your answer to introduce the concept of mock epic genre, and you can also discuss that how it elevates trivial matters using grand epic style. You should discuss the role of some sylphs like Ariel, the chief sylph, Ariel, the chief sylph, and in mimicking the roles of gods in classical epics. You should explain how the sylphs provide structure, suspense, and a sense of cosmic importance to Belinda's day, thereby parodying the seriousness of epics. There is a emphasization there of their comic effectiveness and how their failure underscores the poem's satirical tone. So parody of classical deities is representing here. The sylphs is they are actually mimicking Greek gods and goddesses. Sylph represents female coquetry and superficiality. It heightened the ironic distance between epic form and silly content. They serve to magnify the trivial through epic intervention, right? Now the next question is, the polished exterior of the Rape of the Lock barely conceals a rapacious and predatory society. This is very important question. ये 2013 में आया था 25 मार्क्स के लिए. So you can begin your answer by addressing the surface elegance of Pope's poem. The refined language is there, ornate descriptions are there, uh, there is a structured form. Then after discussing these elements in your answer, you can contrast this with the underlying critique of social behavior. सोशल बिहेवियर जो है वो आप यहाँ पर डिस्कस कर सकते हो. वो है जैसे कि सेल्फिशनेस हो गया, वैनिटी हो गया. मैं यहाँ लिख देती हूँ, सेल्फिशनेस, वैनिटी, सॉरी फॉर द हैंड राइटिंग. तीसरा हो गया जैसे मॉरल वैक्यूटी. अब ये सारी चीज़ें इसमें लिख सकते हैं तो आपका आंसर बहुत ही इफ़ेक्टिव रहेगा. एंड जेंडर डायनामिक्स इज़ देयर. देखिए, जब मैंने लास्ट टाइम भी आंसर स्ट्रैटेजी डिस्कस की थी जॉन डन की तब भी, और इवन के क्लियर पर भी, और मतलब जितने भी टॉपिक्स हमने डिस्कस किए, मैंने हर बार ये आपसे कहा है कि जो भी आपका एग्जामिनर है, मे बी इफ़ यू आर एन UPSC एस्पिरेंट और मे बी द ग्रेजुएट और द मास्टर स्टूडेंट, जो भी आप स्टूडेंट है, बट बीइंग अ लिटरेचर स्टूडेंट, आपकी ये फ़र्ज़ बनता है कि आपके आंसर्स अच्छे ही होने चाहिए। आपसे कोई भी मतलब कोई भी आपसे समरी नहीं जानना चाहता है। समरी तो गूगल पर भी लिखी है, समरी तो हर कोई जानता है। जिस जिस भी इंसान ने ये टेक्स्ट पढ़ा होगा उसको समरी पता होगी। समरी तो हर कोई नहीं जानना चाहता, इसमें आप अपना क्या दे रहे हैं। समरी तो वही है जो अलेक्जेंडर पोप ने 18th सेंचुरी में लिखा है। पर हमारी क्या ड्यूटी है जब भी हम आंसर लिख रहे हैं, जब भी हम लिटरेचर को पढ़ते हैं, कि हमने उस पर क्या समझा। जब हम ग्रेजुएशन में भी थे तब भी ये हमने टॉपिक पढ़ा था, तब भी हमारे टीचर्स ने हमें यही सिखाया था। इसलिए मैं भी आपको यही सिखा रही हूँ कि आंसर्स में सिर्फ समरी नहीं होनी चाहिए। आप 2 से 3 चीज़ें आप याद कर लीजिए कि आपके आंसर में होना चाहिए। सबसे पहले आपका पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, आपका क्या सोचना है इस क्वेश्चन को लेकर, इस टेक्स्ट को लेकर। दूसरा, अगर ये पोइट्री है तो आप इसमें पोएम के लाइंस की कुछ रेफरेंस दे सकते हैं। अगर आप रेफरेंस देते हैं तो ये एग्जामिनर को, जो भी आपका आंसर पढ़ता है, उसको ये विश्वास दिलाता है कि आपने टेक्स्ट बहुत अच्छे से पढ़ा है, बहुत ही डीपली पढ़ा है। अब जैसे ये पॉलिश एक्सटीरियर की बात हो रही है, मतलब लैंग्वेज की बात हो रही है, तो जो जो लाइंस कैंटो 1, स्पेशली इन कैंटो 1 और एंड कैंटो 4 में, ये जो लाइंस है, इवन कैंटो 5 में भी, जहाँ पर वैनिटी की, चेस्टिटी की बातें हो रही है, कैंटो 2 में भी है। आप दोबारा से अगर मेरी क्लासेस सुनेंगे तो आपको समझ में आ जाएगा मैं क्या कह रही हूँ। अगर आप उन लाइंस को लिखते हैं तो एग्जामिनर को ये विश्वास आपके लिए आ जाता है कि भाई हाँ, आपने टेक्स्ट पढ़ा है। तो पहली चीज़ तो ये कि इस पर आपको सिर्फ समरी नहीं लिखनी है, आपको अपना पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू देना है कि आपने क्या समझा। दूसरी चीज़, आपको रेफरेंस देने हैं। चाहे आप कैरेक्टर के रेफरेंस दीजिए या आप लाइन, अगर आपको लाइन्स याद नहीं होती तो आप कैरेक्टर के रेफरेंस दीजिए और उस इंसिडेंट को स्पेसिफिकली आप बताएं जो इस क्वेश्चन से रिलेट करता है। तीसरी चीज़ कि आपके जो आंसर्स है ना, वो ऐसे नहीं होने चाहिए कि कहीं से भी आपने शुरू कर दिया और कहीं से भी आपने ख़त्म कर दिए। आपके आंसर बहुत ही फ्रेम्ड होने चाहिए, उनका एक पैटर्न होना चाहिए कि किस पैसेज में आप क्या लिखेंगे, किस पैराग्राफ में आप क्या लिखेंगे, और आपके आंसर बहुत ही बैलेंस्ड वे में होने चाहिए। ठीक है। सो you can start by addressing the surface elegance of Pope's poem. You can add the you can contrast this with underlying critique of social behavior like selfishness, vanity, moral vacuity, and gender dynamics. You can use examples like Baron's ambition and trivialization of female honor to argue that the poem is a subtle but sharp exposure of a predatory society masked by elegance, right? Now the next question is, so how does Pope achieve a mock heroic effect in treating a trivial theme? So you can use the epic structure to narrate a hair theft. So to effectively answer this question, you can begin by defining mock heroic poetry, which is a literary style that uses the grand style of epic poetry to depict trivial and petty events, often to create satire. So, in The Rape of the Lock, Alexander Pope brilliantly adopts this form by using elevated structure and language of classical epics to narrate that seemingly insignificant event of a lock of hair being cut, right? You can also highlight how Alexander Pope imitates the epic form. He employs an invocation of muse, includes supernatural machinery like cells and genomes. It describes the battle over a card game as though it were a war and uses heroic couplets throughout. तो आप इसमें ना कुछ एग्जाम्पल्स भी यूज़ कर सकते हैं एपिक सिमिली के और एलिवेटेड डिक्शन के. फॉर इंस्टेंस, बेलिंडाज टॉयलेट रूटीन इज डिस्क्राइब्ड एज अ सेक्रेड राइट. आपने कैंटो 1 में पढ़ा है बेलिंडाज टॉयलेट सीन. सो वो जो उसका टॉयलेट रूटीन है दैट इज डिस्क्राइब्ड एज अ sacred ritual, lending grandeur to a mundane. So you can discuss how irony permeates the poem, particularly through stylistic contrast. So the grandeur of form mocks the pettiness of the subject. This contrast critiques the vanity and artificiality of aristocratic society. And you can conclude your answer by stating that through mock heroic techniques, Pope not only entertains but also critiques societal values, especially the superficial obsession with beauty, honor, and reputation. So you can add these points in your answer, so your answer will be effective, right? Now the next question. Would you consider that exposure of immoderate female vanity is motivating impulse behind the rape of the lock? So यहाँ पर ना अब बेलिंडा के कैरेक्टर को एक्सप्रेस कर सकते हो लाइक बेलिंडा एज अ फिगर ऑफ फीमेल प्राइड एंड सेल्फ लव. जैसे कैंटो 1 में वो सुबह उठ रही है, तो लेट उठ रही है वो, और बहुत ही अच्छे से एग्जैजरेटिंग वे में वो उसको डिस्क्राइब किया है. जब वो उठती है, उसका लैप डॉग उसको शॉक जिसका नाम होता है वो उसको उठाने आता है. फिर वो जो उसका बिलेट बॉक्स होता है जिसमें लव लेटर्स होते हैं वो उनको पढ़ती है. फिर वो रेडी होती है, पूरा अच्छे से ताम झाम करके वो रेडी होती है. सो बेसिकली आप उसको डिस्क्राइब कर सकते हो. मिरर्स वैनिटी इन कोर्टशिप एंड अपीयरेंस. You can add this point to your answer. There is a satirical tone towards cosmetics and ritual flirtation. Not a condemnation but a playful critique is this. So you can add these points to write your answer. इसके अलावा आप लिख सकते हैं, you can write the central idea. You can begin your answer by addressing the central idea, which is the role of female vanity in motivating the poem's events. Position Belinda as a symbolic figure representing the self-love and pride typical of aristocratic women of the time. You can support this by citing her obsession with appearance. बेलिंडा का काफ़ी obsession है ना उसकी appearance को लेकर. हर elaborate और जो उसका beauty rituals हैं उसको आप डिस्कस कर सकते हो अपने आंसर में. हर elaborated beauty rituals, डिपेंडेंस ऑन कॉस्मेटिक्स, कोर्टली फ्लर्टेशन. जैसे जो उसका वो जो ड्रेसिंग टेबल है, आपने अगर कैंटो 1 आपको याद होगा तो उसमें आपने पढ़ा होगा कि जो उसका ड्रेसिंग टेबल है उसमें दुनिया भर की फेमस चीज़ें हैं, जैसे कि इंडिया के जेम्स हैं और कोई एक और कंट्री थी मुझे यहाँ नाम ध्यान नहीं, वहाँ का परफ्यूम है, बिलेट बॉक्स है वहाँ पर, ऐसे करके कई सारी चीज़ें हैं. तो यू कैन ऐड दीज थिंग्स इन योर आंसर. उसके बाद यू कैन एक्सप्लोर हाउ पोप होल्ड्स अप अ मिरर टू द vanity of polite society, right? So particularly focus on how trivial matters looks, fan behavior and flattery dominate social interactions. Emphasize the satirical tone in which Pope adopts while he criticizes vanity. His approach is never harsh and condemning. Instead, he used playful wit and irony to expose the absurdity of such preoccupations. You should mention that Pope does not entirely blame Belinda. Rather, he critiques the artificiality of the social world he inhabits. तो ऐसे वो डायरेक्टली उसने बेलिंडा को कभी ब्लेम नहीं किया. उसने अगर मजाक भी उड़ाया तो वो बहुत ही फ़नी वे में उड़ाया है. उसने कभी बेलिंडा को इंटायरली ब्लेम नहीं किया. रादर देन ही क्रिटिक्स the artificiality of the social world in which she inhabits. So conclude your answer by suggesting that while female vanity serves as a narrative device, The poem ultimately offers a light-hearted comic critiques of the values and priorities of the 18th century aristocratic culture, right? Now the next question is, Rape of the Lock demonstrates what mighty contests rise from trivial things. Discuss. ये 2015 का क्वेश्चन है, आज से 10 साल पहले का, 15 मार्क्स का. So you can use opening lines of the poem which set mock epic tone. You can use these lines here. To answer this question effectively, begin by unpacking the opening line of the poem, which frames the entire mock epic premise, transforming a mirror incident, a minor incident, that is the cutting of a lock of hair, into an event of exaggerated significance. Right? The phrase itself, this is a phrase, no? What mighty contest right from trivial things. So the phrase itself is both ironic and foundational to Pope's technique. You should explain how the poem mimics the epic tradition in its structure, diction, and tone, but applies these elevated devices to a petty aristocratic quarrel, creating humor and critique. You can emphasize how Alexander Pope uses hyperbolic language and epic simile to turn Belinda's beauty routine and Baron's theft into mythic scale events. So, this is a pretty quarrel over a lock of hair blown into a cosmic event. And you can add society's obsession with appearance is in your answer, right? And this exaggerated treatment ridicules aristocratic inflated sense of self-importance, showcasing how vanity and on this is actually aristocratic self-importance, the vanity and superficial values could lead to melodramatic social tensions. You can discuss how the poem serves as a mirror to society's obsession with appearance and flirtation and courtship rituals, exposing the emptiness behind such performative elegance. You can conclude your answer by noting that through his elegant verse and ironic tone, the Pope critiques not just the characters but the broader culture that places grand emotional stakes on trivial matters, achieving both humor and insight, right? Now, the next question is, describe in detail the mock heroic elements introduced Pope in the Rape of the Lock. ये 2016 क्वेश्चन है, 15 मार्क्स का. So, to write a compelling answer to this question, you can begin by clearly defining the term mock epic and the heroic couplets, invocation to muse. So, you can explain how it is a literary form that applies the grand style and convention of classical epic poetry to trivial and commonplace subjects. In this text, The Rape of the Lock, Alexander Pope masterfully employs several mock heroic techniques to elevate a petty social incident. The cutting of a lock of hair into the high stake epic narrative. Right? So you can discuss the supernatural agents, the cells here in the battle scene, in the daily routines of Belinda, and through the grand similes, right? So, in Rape of the Lock, you can start by discussing the poem's use of heroic couplets, right? And the formal invocation to muse, which mirrors the structure of classical epics like those of Homer and Virgil. Then move to inclusion of supernatural machinery, supernatural agents, namely the sylphs and other spirits who function much like gods in the epics, overseeing and influencing human affairs. The battle scenes such as the game of cards, are described in exaggerated, grandiose terms, further satirizing the seriousness of epic confrontations. Highlight Pope's use of epic simile to describe trivial events, lending them artificial depth and weight. And most importantly, stress the seriousness, stress how the poem maintains a tone of exaggerated seriousness. So you should ये बहुत important है, you must give stress on that how the poem maintains a tone of exaggerated seriousness for a trivial plot actually. So which contrasts ironically with the triviality of the plot, thereby generating humor and critique. So you can conclude your answers by the noting that Alexander Pope not only imitates the epic form but also mocks its rigidity, mocks the classical epics, and using it to expose absurdities of aristocratic vanity and social pretensions. Right? Now, the next question is, how does Alexander Pope make Rape of the Lock a sophisticated poem in terms of its structure and language? 2016 का क्वेश्चन है, 15 मार्क्स का. So Alexander Pope's The Rape of the Lock achieves literary sophistication through its meticulous structure and refined the use of language, making it a masterpiece of the mock epic genre. At the core of its structure lies Pope's mastery of the heroic couplet, right? A rhyming iambic pentameter, line line pair that lends rhythmic elegance and poetic control, right? the rhyme scheme the rhyme scheme is not merely ornamental but integral to the musicality and epigrammatic precision of the poem. So पोप ने यहाँ पर बैलेंस सिंटेक्स यूज़ किया है with its symmetrical clauses and parallel constructions. It reflects the neoclassical ideals of order and decorum. His refined diction, Pope's refined diction, often elevated and classical in tone, continues to the parody of the epic form by juxtaposing lofty language with trivial subjects matter. Moreover, the poem's sophistication is enhanced by allusion to myth, right? Epic traditions and epic traditions and classical antiquity, so such as the invocation of the muse, references to Greek and Roman deities, and comparisons with the Homeric and Virgilian heroes, all employed ironically to comment on contemporary aristocratic society. So finally, Pope's blend of wit, satire, and elegance elevates the poem beyond mere social critique. His clever use of language not only exposes the absurdity of vanity and superficiality but also celebrates poetic from itself, and making the Rape of the Lock both a brilliant satire and a highly polished literary artifact. Right? Now the next question is, so critically examine Pope's The Rape of the Lock as satire on the fashionable, beautiful, aristocratic ladies of the 18th century. ये 2017 में 20 नंबर का क्वेश्चन आया था. सो Alexander Pope's The Rape of the Lock is a brilliant satirical portrayal of the 18th century aristocratic ladies, right? So focusing not on their intellect or inner worth but on their excessive concern with beauty, appearance, and reputation. So the central figure, who is Belinda, serves as an emblem of feminine artificiality, whose elaborate beauty rituals and superficial lifestyle embody the cultural of vanity prevalent among the upper class women of Pope's era. So, Alexander Pope targets the obsession with appearance over intellect here, where a woman's worth is measured by how well she conforms to the ideals of grace and glamour. Right? Belinda is representing here as a symbol of feminine artificiality. Right? So, Pope targets the obsession with appearance over intellect, where a woman's worth is measured by how well she conforms to the ideal of grace and glamour. Through these satirical exaggerations, he highlights the frivolous concerns such as the loss of a lock of hair are treated with gravity of epic tragedy, exposing the shallowness of fashionable society. The poem also critiques the vanity, flirtation, and obsession with reputation. Actually, the poem critiques not just with vanity and flirtation, but also the delicate, concern with reputation is there, wherein women's public images are guarded by more zealously than their virtues. So, however, Pope's tone remained light-hearted, comic rather than misogynistic. His satire is aimed more at societal absurdities than at women themselves. The poem avoids harsh condemnation, offering instead a witty, playful critique of a culture that prioritizes surface over substance, making it gentle yet effective social commentary. Right? Now, the next question is, what picture of 18th century aristocratic London life do you gain from Pope's The Rape of the Lock in terms of both its material and moral aspects? So, this question is from 2018 paper. So, Alexander Pope's The Rape of the Lock offer a vivid and ironic portrayal of 18th century aristocratic London life, exposing its material material opulence and moral vacuity. Right. So the poem presents a world preoccupied with the tea drinking, cosmetics, card games, leisure life, and vanity, and other leisurely pastimes, suggesting a society driven by indulgence and superficiality. Right? So, Pope cleverly uses satire to reveal how the upper classes were consumed by concerns of fashion, right? Beauty and vanity, where outward appearances mattered far more than the inner virtue or intellect. So, beneath this glittering exterior, however, lies a deeper moral emptiness where the real values are sacrificed at the altar of reputation and pleasure. The characters in the poem, particularly Belinda, seem to invest all their emotional energy in trivial matters, such as the cutting of a lock of her hair, which is treated with the gravity of an epic disaster. Social interactions revolve around flirtation, right, and the preservation of one's public image, that is appearance, rather than genuine connection or ethical conduct. So Pope's satirical lens exposes how shallow pursuits dominate social life, painting a picture of a morally stagnant and materially self-indulgent society. Ultimately, the poem critiques the descendant and hollowness, right? Hollowness of the aristocracy, offering readers a sharp yet elegant moral commentary on the world of fashionable London. Right, now the next question is, critically evaluate Pope's The Rape of the Lock as a social satire. बहुत famous question है ये. So this is very important question. ये अगर आप बीए में भी पढ़ते हैं, बीए ऑनर्स इंग्लिश में पढ़ते हैं, तो ये क्वेश्चन वहाँ आने के बहुत चांसेस हैं. So Alexander Pope's The Rape of the Lock stands as a masterful example of social satire, exposing the vanity, आर्टिफिशियलिटी. ये क्या क्या एक्सपोज करता है? सबसे पहले तो ये चीज़ है, यहाँ लिखा नहीं है. ये वैनिटी, आर्टिफिशियलिटी एंड, सॉरी फॉर द हैंड राइटिंग, सुपरफिशियलिटी, आर्टिफिशियलिटी एंड वैनिटी, इसको एक्सपोज करता है. और ये वैनिटी, आर्टिफिशियलिटी और सुपरफिशियलिटी है किसका? ये है ऑफ 18th सेंचुरी एरिस्टोक्रेटिक सोसाइटी. रिटन इन द मॉक एपिक स्टाइल, द पोएम द रेप ऑफ द लॉक magnifies a trivial event, a lock of hair being cut, into a grand and heroic narrative. So this exaggerated treatment allows Pope to ridicule the disproportionate self-importance of upper classes and the hollowness of their concerns. So one of the central targets of Pope's satire is the obsession with appearance, uh, appearance and social status. This is, you can add these points to your answer. And the characters, especially Belinda, are portrayed as preoccupied with beauty rituals, flirtations, and maintaining reputation. So the dressing table becomes sacred altar, and the ritual preparations for a social outing mirror the solemnity of a religious ceremony. Through this depiction, Pope mocks how external glamour is mistaken for true worth is in aristocratic circle. So moreover, यहाँ पर ना मतलब अटैक किया गया सुपरफिशियलिटी को ऑफ द एलीट क्लास, सटायर किया गया फैशन, मैनर्स और जेंडर रोल्स पे. वो है, ये तो हो गया सुपरफिशियलिटी. और ये जो सेकंड पॉइंट है, ये हो गया आर्टिफिशियलिटी. एंड सोसाइटीज इनएबिलिटी टू डिफरेंशिएट सीरियस एंड सिली, दैट इज वैनिटी. एंड यूज ऑफ इट टू रिवील मोर एंड cultural decays representing here. So this trivial cause of, moreover the poem critiques the moral decay की बात हो रही है ना, moral and cultural decay की. So the poem critiques the moral and cultural decay behind the facade of refinement. The trivial cause of a conflict, cutting a lock of hair, unfolds into epic like battles of egos and honors. Right, this highlights how minor personal affront are exaggerated into public dramas, reflecting the pettiness of the elite. The poem cleverly exposes the society where wit is prized over wisdom, and the social success is more important than personal integrity. So Pope also uses supernatural beings like Sils to parody the epic convention of the divine intervention. So these airy spirits are tasked with protecting beauty and chastity rather than guiding heroes, and national, thereby mocking the epic form and shallow priorities to the fashionable society. So importantly, the satire is sharp but not cruel. Pope avoids outright condemnation and instead use of irony and humor to gently chide the follies of his age. His tone remains elegant, witty, and balanced, avoiding misogyny even while criticizing the feminine vanity and aristocratic affection. So Belinda, though satirized, is also treated with charm and poetic grace. So in conclusion, you can conclude your answer by saying it's the rape of the lock is a brilliant social satire that captures the emptiness and elegance of early 18th century society. Pope's wit, poetic skill, and subtle moral commentary allows the poem to critique the trivialization of virtue in a world consumed by reputation, um, pleasure and appearance, right? Now, the last question for this session is, show that Pope's use of the machinery of the self in the rape of the lock heightens both satire and poetry. मशीनरी ऑफ सेल्फ तो हम डिस्कस कर चुके हैं, लेकिन ये थोड़ा सा अलग क्वेश्चन है। ये बहुत ही रीसेंट क्वेश्चन है, 2019 का, 15 मार्क्स का। सो एलेक्जेंडर पोप्स यूज ऑफ सेल्फ, the airy supernatural beings, it adds a fantastical dimension to the rape of the lock. That is true. Imitating the divine machinery traditionally found in epic poetry. However, unlike the gods of Homer and Virgil, who intervene the insignificant human affairs, Pope's cells guard trivial concerns like vanity, flirtation, and reputation, right? So, thereby creating an ironic contrast that enhances the mock heroic satire of the poem. The cells, especially Ariel, are assigned grand roles in a protection of Belinda, reflecting the epic convention of divine guardianship, right? Yet they are entrusted not with the defense of the empires, but with the preserving a lock of hair and safeguarding a lady's honor in tea parties and card games. This incongruity between the form and content is central to Pope's satirical method. Then elaborate the transformation of the myth of transformation. Made becomes cells, genomes, nymphs, and salamanders. Further ridicules the frivolous frivolity the frivolous moral values of a fashionable society. This represents artificiality of high society. Ironically, despite their solemn efforts, the self fails to prevent the theft of the lock, right? So, highlighting the futility of the mission of exposing the hollowness of aristocratic concern. Ariel, upon trying to read Belinda's mind, finds an earthly lover lurking at her heart and abandons her. Another moment of subtle irony that undercuts both supernatural intervention and moral seriousness. So, poetically, the machinery of cells adds a grandeur and the ornamentation to the verse. The airy elegance, the poetic names, uh, the graceful moments contribute to the musicality and lyrical beauty of the poem. The celestial image surrounding them elevates narrative tone even as it mocks the inflated importance assigned to the shallow events. Right? So these cells serve the sylphs serves a dual role, dual purpose. They enhance the mock epic style of the poem by imitating classical divine interventions, and they deepen the satire by underscoring the disproportionate seriousness with which the characters treated a fundamentally petty situation. So Pope's ingenuity lies in using this fantastical agent to both beautify the poem and ridicule the society it portrayed. तो यहाँ पर हमारे सारे क्वेश्चंस ख़त्म हो गए हैं। आप अगर अच्छे से आंसर लिखना चाहते हो तो एक बार और आप सारी क्लासेस को सुन लीजिए, पढ़ लीजिए, उसके बाद इन क्वेश्चंस को सॉल्व कीजिए। वैसे मैं जहाँ तक मेरे लिए पॉसिबल था मैंने प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस को ढूंढ कर उन्हें सॉल्व किया। अगर स्टिल आपका कोई क्वेश्चन है जो मैंने यहाँ डिस्कस नहीं किया और आपको लगता है कि वो इम्पॉर्टेंट है, तो कमेंट सेक्शन आपके लिए ओपन है। आप कभी भी वहाँ पर अपना क्वेश्चन कमेंट के थ्रू पूछ सकते हैं। सो with today's class, we officially conclude our journey through Alexander Pope's The Rape of the Lock, a brilliant satire wrapped in wit, elegance, and poetic splendor. From from the mischievous selves to the shimmering lock that soared among the stars, we have explored the poem's depth, humor, and cultural critique with care and clarity. Thank you to all the students who stayed with me till the very end. Your enthusiasm and consistency made this learning experience truly rewarding. So अब ऑफिशियली ख़त्म हो गया है, लेकिन कमेंट सेक्शन आपके लिए अभी भी ओपन है. आपकी क्वेरीज, आपकी क्वेश्चंस वहाँ पर हमेशा वेलकम्ड हैं. So from tomorrow we begin a new chapter, a new topic from our syllabus, as we dive into William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth selected poems, as we have 8 to 9 poems from William Wordsworth selected work as prescribed in our syllabus. So get ready to embrace the beauty of nature, emotions, and simplicity through the lens of romantic poetry. So stay curious, stay consistent. See you in the next class. Thank you.